Long before Greece rose, long before the scrolls of Hippocrates, there was Kemet. In Kemet, where the sun kissed the earth and men built wonders still unmatched today, there lived a man named Imhotep. Not a myth, not a legend. A man of flesh and spirit who moved among kings. A man who studied the stars, who designed monuments, who understood the body and the mind in ways so advanced that even today we struggle to comprehend him. Imhotep was physician, architect, philosopher, priest, a master of many disciplines when the world itself was still learning to write its name. He was called the one who comes in peace, and it was through him that the seeds of true medicine were sown. 2,000 years after Imhotep had walked the sands of Kemet, another name would rise in a new land, Hippocrates. He would be celebrated as the father of medicine. He would swear oaths in the name of healing. But what the world was never taught, or was taught to forget, is that the river of knowledge that fed Hippocrates did not begin in Greece. It began in the heart of Africa, in the Nile Valley, in the temples and schools where Imhotep's shadow still taught in silence. Knowledge was not invented by Greece. It was inherited. In Kemet, healing was not simply physical. It was spiritual, intellectual, emotional. Imhotep understood the delicate balance between body and soul. He understood that disease was not merely a punishment from the gods, but a disruption of harmony within. He cataloged injuries. He created diagnoses. He performed surgeries. He left behind a legacy so profound that even the Greeks would later deify him, disguising him under the name Asclepius, their so-called god of healing. Yet the true name was Imhotep, and it was whispered in the black soil of the Nile long before it reached marble halls in Athens. Hippocrates lived in a time when Greek thinkers traveled across seas to learn at the feet of Kemetian priests and scholars. Plato studied in Kemet. Pythagoras studied in Kemet. Herodotus, who called Egypt the cradle of civilization, studied the ways of the Kemetians and admitted openly that much of Greek thought had its root in African soil. Hippocrates himself was a branch grafted onto an ancient tree whose roots sank deep into the heart of Africa. But history was written by those who built empires on the bones of others. And so the world was taught to believe that Greece was the beginning, and that Africa was the dark, silent void. Yet the truth never died. It lived in whispers. It lived in blood. It lived in the stones of forgotten temples, in scrolls hidden away, in the memory of a people who refused to let their true story be erased. Today, when we speak the name Hippocrates, we must also whisper the name Imhotep. For without Imhotep, there is no Hippocrates. Without Kemet, there is no Greece. Without Africa, there is no Western civilization. Imhotep laid the foundation of diagnosis, prognosis, surgery, and the understanding of the anatomy of man. He understood how to treat wounds, set fractures, perform simple surgeries. He understood the connection between mind and body, between food and health, between spirit and flesh. His teachings shaped the temples of learning where future generations, Greek and otherwise, would drink from the well of wisdom. They came as students. They left as masters. They returned home with knowledge and built reputations. But the sacred source was Africa. The temples at Thebes, the libraries at Heliopolis, the grand universities that once stood before the sands reclaimed them, were the true birthplaces of what the world would call medicine, mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy. There are scrolls, broken and scattered, that speak of the surgeries of Imhotep. There are papyri, like the Edwin Smith Papyrus, which record methods so advanced they rival those taught in modern universities. Techniques for dealing with head injuries, spinal fractures, and organ trauma written thousands of years before Hippocrates was born. And yet, when the modern world writes its textbooks, it begins the story with Greece. As if a tree grew from air without roots, as if knowledge sprang up from stone without seed. But the seed was African. The soil was African. The first healers, the first philosophers, the first astronomers, the first scientists were African. When Hippocrates formalized the Hippocratic Oath, it bore the unmistakable fingerprint of Kemetian ethics. Do no harm, heal in peace, serve truth. These were not Greek ideas. They were ancient African principles, encoded in the teachings of Imhotep and those who followed after him. We live in a time now where the veil is being torn down, where truth is no longer buried under colonial lies and racist revisionism. The world is beginning to remember that Africa was not the student, but the teacher. That Kemet was not the dark, but the light. That Imhotep was not a myth, but a master whose footsteps still echo through the corridors of human knowledge. To honor Hippocrates properly is to honor Imhotep first. To speak of Western medicine with honesty is to begin with Kemet, not Greece. To teach our children truthfully is to say, the greatest minds of the ancient world walked first in Africa, and the world that came after them is forever in their debt. Imhotep stands at the beginning. He stands as the father of medicine, the architect of healing. He stands as a bridge between body and soul, between man and the divine. He stands as the invisible giant upon whose shoulders Hippocrates and all others rose. And in the end, it is not about taking away credit from those who built upon his work. It is about restoring the full truth. A truth that does not diminish anyone, but instead shines a brighter light on the full magnificence of human history. A truth that says Africa was, and remains, the wellspring from which civilization first drank. So when you hear Hippocrates praised as the father of medicine, remember that he was a son of a much older wisdom, a branch of a much deeper root, a child of a land where black soil met black genius, and together they gave birth to knowledge that would shape the world. The tares and the wheat were sown together in history, lies and truth, darkness and light. But the harvest comes, the separation comes, and the truth of Imhotep rises, unstoppable, undeniable, eternal. We stand today not merely to correct history, but to awaken it, to let the voice of Imhotep be heard again, to remind the world that Africa did not borrow light. Africa was the light. And so it is written, and so it shall be known.